Hello everyone. Our lesson today is about classification. Classification, firstly, groups, species, and keys. As we know, all living things exist on Earth are grouped into many kingdoms or are grouped into kingdoms. Living things are grouped or classified according to the features they possess or to the features that they show. In a classification system, the two major groups are the plant kingdom and animal kingdom. So here we will depend on these two kingdoms, the plant kingdom and animal kingdom, and we will see how we can classify more about each one of these kingdoms. For example, if we will take the plant kingdom as an example, we will see this plant kingdom is divided into 5 large subgroups. These subgroups are algae, mosses, ferns, conifers, and flowering plants. So, plant kingdom, all the plants that exist on Earth belong to this kingdom, and then the different examples of plants, each a group of plants, it belongs to one of these subgroups. The same thing is with animal kingdom. Also animal kingdom, it's divided firstly into two main subgroups. Okay, two main subgroups, we call them invertebrates and vertebrates. They depend, all the animals, depending on if they have backbone or they don't. The one that it have backbone, we call it vertebrates. Those they don't have the backbone, we call them invertebrates. Then, if we will take vertebrates, also we will be able to divide it into more subgroups. For example, vertebrates, we can divide them into fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. The same thing is with invertebrates. So, tips for success here, it's what? Make sure you can name the major groups of plants and animals. So, you should be able to firstly know the names of plant kingdom. The subgroups of plant kingdom, these 5, it's a must. And also animal kingdom, you should know the invertebrates and vertebrates, and also the groups of vertebrates, and also the invertebrates. These 4 invertebrates you studied in grade 8. Then each one of these, it has the name of each one, it has a meaning. For example, let's take an example, invertebrates. We said animals without backbone. Now, jellyfish, depends on the kind of fish here. Because they call them jelly fish because the body of this it looks like a jelly. And flatworm, also this group, it contains worms. The shape of these worms is flat, and so on. Then, in addition to this classification, then also within each subgroup we can have another divisions. For example, the major groups are also divided into groups. Okay, these are the major groups. Also, we can divide it into another groups. An example, arthropod. This one, arthropod. For example, it's divided into the insect group, spider, which is arachnids, crab, and lobster group, which is crustaceans, and centipede and millipede group. Okay, so now with each group, now we can divide it also into another smaller groups. Species in classification, we deal with these words: kingdom, species. Kingdom is the largest group in the classification system, while species is the smallest classification group and of a classification system. Then, to identify organisms or to identify individuals depending on their features, we will use a way we call it keys. So, keys, it's what? Keys is a series of statements that can be used with observations on a living thing to help to identify it. Okay? Here, it's an example of key or this series of statements, series of questions to identify an organism. For example, pond animal. Okay, this animal has legs or doesn't. If you will have an example of animal and you will start example of animal and these statements, these questions. By following these questions, at the end you will get the answer or you will be able to identify this organism. Check your understanding. Again, it's your task. Inheritance. Inheritance, what do you mean by inheritance is passing of the traits from parents to the offspring. As we know, all of us, we share some characteristics from our parents. How, why, or how it happens, this it's what they mean by inheritance. We inherit some of these traits from our parents. How is this process it will happen? Firstly, we should be familiar with the genetic material. What do you mean by genetic material? Genetic material, we mean by it, in our cells, there is nucleus. This nucleus, it contains chromosomes, okay? These chromosomes, it contains genes, and these genes are made up of DNA. So, you should be able to explain the structure of chromosome, okay? Chromosome, it's a thread-like structure that it carries the genetic information. Then, this chromosome, it's made up of thousands of genes. Then, these genes are what? Are made up of long strands of DNA. The DNA, it carries the instructions for the body to make particular feature. Okay, so DNA, it's responsible for showing a specific feature. It could be, for example, eye color, specific eye color, specific hair colors. Then, how these traits or how these characteristics it will pass to offspring. In fertilization, what will happen? A gamete from male and another gamete from female. We call them sperm and egg. When the sperm and egg fuse with each other, they will form the zygote. This zygote now, it carries information from both. Half of this information, it comes from father, and the other half, it comes from mother. So when they will fuse with each other, they form something new, a new characteristics, okay? So this will be transferred to the offspring. Then this zygote, when it will start dividing more and more, it will form the embryo, then the offspring. Okay, so here it's the genetic material, here it's the cell, this is the nucleus. Inside the nucleus there is chromosome, and this chromosome, it's made up of genes, okay, and these genes are made up of a DNA. Selective breeding. Selective breeding, if you will find the meaning of these words, selective. Selective, it means choosing something by yourself. So, selective breeding here, it's what? It's breeding of two organisms that we select them. Okay, for example, if you have two organisms with a specific feature, specific characteristics, or some features that you want to increase it, so what you will do? You will choose the two organisms that carry these features, the organisms that have the best features, then you will breed them together. So in order to what? In order to increase this feature. So this is what do you mean by selective breeding. Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, he was one of the scientists. Okay, what he did, he uh, he traveled on a survey ship called Beagle. What he did when he traveled to to an island, they called them Galapagos. Okay, he found some organisms, some animals. Okay, Darwin found finches with different shaped beaks. So why this finch they have different beaks? So that it's because of the environment that they live in it. So same organism, but it lives in different environment. So what happened? This organism, to survive, to stay alive in this environment, what happened? He evolved. So a change happened to its body. So now this organism it's adapted to the environment. So this kind of selection, what we call it, natural selection. Natural selection here, the organism with the organism that it's well adapted to the environment will have a bigger or a higher chance to survive. So this is what they mean by natural selection. So Charles Darwin, he was the first one who explained this, and he said all the organisms they came from another organism, or they came from earlier organism, but then what happened to their bodies? Their bodies it start to adapt to the new environment. That's why we are seeing these changes happening to these organisms. Particle theory. The particle theory, it states that all materials are made up from particles that are so tiny cannot be seen with the naked eye. Now, particles in solids, liquids, and gases. As you know, all the materials that we have, they are in these three states of matter. So it's either they are solid, liquid, or gases. But what is the difference between solid, liquid, and gas? The difference between solid, liquid, gas, it's the way of arrangement, the way in which the atoms are arranged. Now, if you will take a look on these three diagrams, A, B, C, you will see we have the same atoms, but they are arranged in different ways. Now, let's see which one is solid, liquid, and which one is gas. Firstly, the properties of solids. The particles in solids are held together by a strong forces. The particles cannot change position, okay, and that's why it gives this shape. So description for solid, you will say the particles here, they have fixed shape and fixed volume. Okay, it has fixed shape and definite volume. Okay, now this first drawing, as you can see, the particles are held together strongly and they form a shape. Okay, it has a fixed shape. That whenever you look at a solid object, you can say this object it has this shape. For example, it could be square, triangular, cylinder, or any shape. Okay, so here why it has this specific or fixed shape? Because the particles of it are held together strongly. Then if you will come to the or before that, the particles here, they, as you can see, these small lines, this it means the particles here, they are vibrating. But how they are vibrating? They are vibrating in their places without moving. Okay, so particles can vibrate a little in their fixed positions. Now the liquid one. The particles of liquids, as you can see here, they don't have a fixed shape. Okay, their shape, it will change. It will depend on the shape of the container. So when you put it in container, directly the particles here will take the shape of the container. So the shape here, it's changed. It will change, but the volume of it, no, the volume here, it's definite. It's fixed. Okay, so particles in liquids are also held together by weaker forces. They are held together, but the force between or among the particles, it's less than the force in the solid particles. Okay, so they can slide over each other. This gives liquid a definite volume, and it can make them hard to squash. Okay, but if we will talk about the shape, it will take the shape of any container. Okay, then the last one, the particles of gases. The particles in gases have very small forces between them. That's why they can move freely. Okay, so if we will talk about the shape and the volume, both of them are changed. They don't have a fixed shape and fixed volume. The shape and volume also, it depends on the container. Changes of state. Now we mentioned the three states of matter, but these three states of matter, they can change from one to another. For example, solid, it can be liquid, and also it can be gases, and opposite. So this change in state of matter, this change, okay, we will have temperature. Temperature is the thing that it will change these states of matter. So changes due to raising the temperature. Okay, heating. When you have a solid, you will heat it. What will happen? This solid, it will start melting. Okay, so solid, it will turn to be liquid by what? By melting. Then liquid, by heating a liquid into a certain temperature, makes it change into a gas. This process called boiling. So from liquid to gas, it's by what? By boiling. Then we have something else, which is evaporation. Evaporation, a liquid can change into gas in a process called evaporation. Okay, now maybe you will ask, what is the difference between boiling and evaporation? Boiling and evaporation, both of this process, it ends with what? It ends with gas. You will have a liquid, and this liquid, then it will be gas. But the difference between boiling and evaporation, it's what? It's the temperature. The liquid, to boil, okay, the temperature of this liquid, it should be, for example, if it's pure water, if we are talking, let's say we are talking about water, the pure water, it will reach 100 Celsius, and then it will start boiling. But evaporation, this process, it could happen with it could happen at any temperature. Put water in a cup and put it outside. Take a look on it after one day, or after a period of time. You will see all the water here, it disappear. What happened? All the water, it evaporate. Here, what was the temperature? Of course, it wasn't 100. It wasn't 100 Celsius. Maybe it was 5, 10, 20. Okay. So this is the difference between boiling and evaporation. Boiling, it happened at specific point of temperature. Here, it could happen at any temperature. Then, now we change it solid to liquid, then liquid to gas. Now, what will happen, or how we can revise this process? How we can turn the gas into liquid? We can turn the gas into liquid by what? By a process we call it condensation. Okay, if a gas is cooled, it may reach a temperature at which it condenses. What's that mean? Condensation, it's changing the gas into the liquid. Now you have the liquid. If you want to turn it to solid, what you will do? You will freeze it. Gas pressure. Gas pressure. If we want to understand what is gas pressure, firstly we should talk about particle theory. Gas, it's made up of particles, and as we explained, the particles of gas, they move freely. Because they move freely, so what's that mean? While they are moving, these particles will collide with each other. So these collisions, it's what? It's the gas pressure. So a gas is made of millions of quickly moving particles which bounce off the walls of the container. Okay, so now you have a container. This is a container, and inside it you have particles. These particles, when they are moving, they are bouncing, or they are firstly hitting the walls of the container. This bouncing, it's what? It's the gas pressure. Now let's see what are the factors that affect on the gas pressure. We have two main factors that affect on pressure. These factors are, firstly, it's the heat, or it's the temperature, and the volume. Let's talk firstly about the heat. If the gas is heated, okay, if you will give more heat for the gas, what will happen? When you are giving more heat, firstly you should understand that heat is an example, or it's a form of energy. So what will happen? The particles receive more energy. When it will receive more energy, it will move faster. When it will move faster, it will bounce more frequently, and there will be more collisions. More collisions, it means more pressure. Okay, so the higher the temperature is, the higher the pressure will be. Now, second factor, if we will keep the temperature constant, we will not change it, but we will change the volume. We will reduce the volume. If the volume will be reduced, okay, let's say this container now, it's this much. It will be smaller. Now what will happen? The particles will bounce more frequently on the smaller area of the container. And also this one, it will what? The gas pressure, it will increase. So, conclusion, higher or more temperature, higher gas pressure. Less volume or smaller volume, also this, it will increase the pressure. Diffusion. What do you mean by diffusion? Diffusion, it's a process in which the particles, it will spread from an area of high concentration to the area of low concentration. For example, if you have a perfume, as you know, inside the can of perfume, there is a high concentration of perfume, and outside the can there is no perfume, so the concentration is low. Now when you will press on the top of this perfume, what will happen, of the can, what will happen? The perfume will start spreading out. It will start spreading from the area of high concentration, which is inside the can, to the area of low concentration, which is the area around the perfume. This, it's what do you mean by diffusion. Check your understanding. Again, also it will be your task. And please, when you will solve these questions, check your understanding. If you have any questions about them, if you have something you couldn't solve it, please write your question in the comments when you will watch the video, and I will answer back. That was everything for this lesson. I hope you got benefit from it, and again, when you will finish watching the video, please write your name, write a comment. If you have any questions, concerns, don't hesitate to text me. Thank you and have a good day.